Prime Minister told Canadians to listen to Michael Wernick, and we did. And last week we heard new evidence that further proves that the Prime Minister directed a coordinated campaign to stop the criminal prosecution of SNC Lavalin, thereby interfering with the prosecutorial discretion of the former Attorney General. So, when will the Prime Minister stop changing his story and start telling the truth?
Yeah!
Honourable Government House Leader.
It was stated at committee that the rule of law in Canada is intact, that Canadians can have confidence in their institutions, and that the rule of law was followed. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister recognizes that we can always improve and strengthen our institutions, and that's why he acknowledged that there was a breakdown of communication and trust within his office, and he's put measures in place to ensure moving forward we have even stronger systems in place. And the Prime Minister also acknowledged that he should have spoken directly with the former minister on this matter, and I think that's important to note, is that the Conservatives are picking and choosing, but we should look at all the facts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski, Nejet, Témiscouata, Les Basques. Over 22 million Yemenis are in extreme distress due to a 4-year-long conflict. The Liberals announced $46.7 million in aid to Yemen in February. But Canada also authorized $15 billion worth of light armoured vehicle exports to Saudi Arabia in 2016, in addition to weapon sales of over $500 million. Those arms are being used to blockade Yemeni ports, preventing humanitarian aid from getting through. Mr. Speaker, what's the point in giving humanitarian aid with one hand and preventing it from reaching civilians with the other?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Consular Affairs.
Supports the peace talks in Yemen. We call on parties to fully implement their commitments and to bring peace to the people of Yemen. We call for full access to humanitarian aid. We have announced additional millions to go directly towards saving people's lives in Yemen, as was referred to. Our government has also yet a UN motion mandating the UN Human Rights Commissioner to send investigators to Yemen to investigate crimes against humanity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Bravo.
The Honourable Member for Miramichi, Grand Lake.
Canada are experiencing an infrastructure deficit after 10 years of neglect by the Harper Conservatives. For small communities, support from higher level of government is absolutely essential to getting crucial infrastructure built. Right.
Mr. Speaker, could the Minister of Economic Development inform the House of the recent steps our government has taken to help rural communities address infrastructure shortcomings?
Honourable Minister of Rural Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his question.
Rural municipalities are eager to get infrastructure projects done, and we know how important it is for them to have a dependable cooperative partner in the federal government. Absolutely. That's why in Budget 2019 we introduced a top-up of $2.2 billion, which will flow directly to municipal governments to get their infrastructure projects underway. While Conservatives across the country continue to show disrespect for municipalities, our government remains a dependable partner for rural communities. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
After hearing the tape last Friday, Canadians were able to get a clear picture of just how far the Prime Minister and his operatives were willing to go to stop the criminal proceedings of SNC Lavalin. In fact, he being the Prime Minister, was quite determined on this, Michael Wernick said on the tape to the former Attorney General. The Prime Minister has changed his story several times, and we've reached the point where he needs to speak the truth to real power, the real power being the people of Canada. When will the Prime Minister come clean and finally tell Canadians the truth?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve to get to hear the truth, and that's exactly why the Justice Committee was meeting in public, Mr. Speaker. And that's exactly why the Prime Minister waived solicitor-client privilege as well as cabinet confidence for the period in which the Justice Committee determined parameters for them to be able to study this matter. These meetings took place in public, Mr. Speaker, so that Canadians could judge for themselves. The Conservatives will continue to speculate and pick and choose points, but we have confidence that Canadians are able to see all of the facts because they are all on the table, they are all in public. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well done.